Have you ever looked at a couple and wondered, how fine is the line between passionate love and deadly obsession? Or have you ever witnessed and wondered how a love relationship transforms from something beautiful into a potential crime scene? This is the story of a mother and daughter, two inseparable souls, best friends to the end, whose lives were tragically cut short in a crime that would leave an entire community reeling. It's a story of love, loss, and a justice system many believe failed them. Today, we'll peel back the layers of the tragic case of Morgan Bazemore and Alicia Hereford, two women whose bond was as unshakable as it was heartbreaking in its sudden end. This incident happened in Norfolk, Virginia. But before we go into the details of what happened, allow me to ask you this. How much is a life worth? Is it 8 years in prison for taking not just one but two lives? 8 years. That's the sentence handed down in this case. A sentence that has sparked outrage, heartbreak, and disbelief. And as you hear this story, you might find yourself asking the same question. Is this justice? Or something else is missing somewhere? Let's find out. You're watching True Crime Stories 24/7. Thanks for joining. Please do well to subscribe and like this video to support us. On the night of March 12th, 2021, the air in Norfolk was thick with the kind of stillness that only comes when the world has settled down. People were in their homes, tucked away in their routines. At Hunter Square Apartments, life seemed ordinary until it wasn't. A mother's instinct was about to collide with unimaginable violence. That night, Morgan Bazemore, a 23-year-old with a bright future, was in a state of panic. She reached out to the one person she could always rely on, her mother, Alicia Hereford. Frantic and afraid, Morgan called her mom, begging for help. There was no hesitation. Alicia, a woman described by everyone who knew her as compassionate, loving, and fiercely protective, rushed to her daughter's side. It's what any mother would do. But by the time Alicia arrived at the parking lot of the Hunter Square Apartments, it was already too late. Gunshots rang out, piercing the quiet night and shattering two lives forever. Morgan and Alicia were found lying lifeless, their bodies riddled with bullets. Morgan was shot twice, including a single fatal bullet to the head. Alicia was shot 3 times, each wound telling a story of rage and precision. Now let's pause here. I want you to imagine the weight of this moment. A mother rushing to save her child, only to meet the same devastating fate. This wasn't just a crime. It was a complete unraveling of 2 lives, 2 families, and an entire community. But here's where it gets even more harrowing. When the police arrived, they discovered something that would send shockwaves through this case. In Alicia's car, they found $250,000 in cash, hidden away, as if it were some dark secret waiting to be uncovered. And tucked inside Morgan's purse was a gun. These findings raise questions that haunt this case to this day. What was the money for? Why was Morgan carrying a gun? And most importantly, what role did these details play in the events of that night? I guess we will find out soon. But before that, let's talk about who these women were. Who exactly are these 2 victims? Alicia Hereford wasn't just a mother. She was a protector, a mentor, and a cornerstone of her family. At 52, she had retired from a dedicated career in social work, spending her life helping others. People often said she was the kind of person who would give you her last dime if it meant easing your burden. Morgan, on the other hand, was practically following in her mother's footsteps, in her own way. At 23, she was already a data analyst for a major company, a mother to 2 young children, and a source of light to everyone who knew her. Her friends described her as vibrant, full of life, and someone who made others feel like they truly belonged. She was the kind of person who could light up a room just by walking into it. Together, these 2 women were a force. They were thick as thieves, best friends who leaned on each other through life's challenges. It's hard not to feel the loss of 2 such beautiful souls ripped away in a single, senseless act of violence. But what about the man responsible? The name Kenyatta Jones quickly surfaced. He wasn't a stranger to Morgan, he was her boyfriend. Their relationship was described as tumultuous, a roller coaster of ups and downs, breakups and reconciliations. And that night, something had pushed him over the edge. Witnesses claimed to have seen Jones arguing with Morgan and Alicia in the parking lot before the shooting. One witness even captured the incident on dashcam footage, showing Jones fleeing the scene in his car. The evidence was damning. And yet, as you'll come to see, justice is not always as straightforward as we want it to be. Back to the question I asked earlier, how much is a life worth? Because here's where the frustration, the heartbreak, and the outrage come into play. Despite the lives he took, despite the evidence against him, Kenyatta Jones would only serve 8 years in prison. 8 years for 2 lives. It's a sentence that has left a family shattered and a community demanding answers. What happened that night in Norfolk is more than just a crime story. It's a reflection of deeper issues in our society. It's about the gaps in our justice system, the struggles of domestic violence victims, and the devastating consequences of a single act of rage. But there's more to this story, and trust me, we're going to unravel the layers of mystery, heartbreak, and frustration that have left everyone who hears this case asking the same question. Was justice truly served? Stay with me, because what comes next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about this case. As investigators began their findings, Morgan's boyfriend name, Kenyatta Jones, quickly rose to the top of their list. Without wasting time, the U.S. Marshals and Norfolk Police set a $5,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. The community held its breath, wondering how long he would evade capture. Then, in a move that surprised many, Jones walked into his attorney's office and turned himself in. But his surrender would only deepen the mystery surrounding this case. The evidence against Jones seemed compelling at first glance. A witness's dash camera had captured crucial moments of the incident, showing people hastily leaving the scene as gunshots rang out. Another witness reported seeing Jones arguing with both victims before the shooting, then fleeing in his vehicle. But in the complex world of criminal justice, what seems clear-cut rarely is. The autopsy reports painted a shocking picture of the victim's final moments. Morgan had been shot twice, with one bullet striking her torso and another fatal shot to her head. The precision of the headshot suggested this wasn't a random act of violence. Her mother, Alicia's wounds told an even more disturbing story. 3 shots, 1 to the chest and 2 to the back, suggesting she may have been trying to flee when the final shots were fired. While the reason behind the killing is yet unknown, the discovery of the money added an unexpected layer of complexity to the case. $250,000 in cash, carefully hidden in Alicia's car trunk. In the back seat, $20,100 in counterfeit bills, meticulously stacked and ready for use. The gun found in Morgan's purse raised even more questions. Had she feared for her life? Had she known she might need protection? The money sparked a legal battle that would run parallel to the murder investigation. Harvey Hereford, Alicia's husband, and Marvin Bazemore, her only surviving child and Morgan's twin brother, both filed claims as co-administrators of her estate. The lawsuit argued that the cash was Alicia's life savings. She owned several properties in Virginia, after all. But the city of Norfolk, through its spokesperson, maintained that the money was seized as evidence and would remain in the property and evidence unit until its rightful owner could be determined. The plot thickened when Marvin Bazemore, now 25, found himself on the wrong side of the law. In June, he was arrested on multiple charges: possessing drugs with intent to sell, carrying a concealed weapon, driving recklessly to evade arrest, and obstruction of justice. He was held without bond in Western Tidewater Regional Jail, adding another layer of tragedy to an already devastating family story. Meanwhile, the investigation into the murders faced mounting challenges. Witnesses who had initially come forward began to withdraw their cooperation. The crucial dash camera footage, which could have been damning evidence, would be rendered inadmissible without witness testimony to authenticate it. The prosecution found themselves in an increasingly difficult position. Norfolk Commonwealth's attorney, Rahman Fatehi, would later confirm that there was no clear evidence linking the cash to illegal activities, meaning it couldn't be forfeited under Virginia law. But the question remained: why would a retired social worker have such a large amount of cash in her car? And why were there counterfeit bills alongside it? As the case moved toward trial, the justice system would face its own trial in the court of public opinion. The prosecution, led by Fatehi, found themselves walking a tightrope between securing a conviction and dealing with uncooperative witnesses. Jones's defense team began to build their case, suggesting their client knew one of the victims carried a gun and might claim self-defense. The investigation had revealed all the elements of a tragic story: domestic violence, mysterious money, uncooperative witnesses, and a gun that was never used. But perhaps the most tragic element was yet to come: a plea deal that would shock the community and leave a family questioning everything they believed about justice. In the midst of all this, Monica Bazemore, Morgan's aunt, would later voice what many were thinking: there are criminals who get more time for drugs. The question of justice, what it means, what it looks like, and who it serves, would become central to this case. But before that moment would come, investigators and prosecutors would face a decision that would change everything. As the case built toward its controversial conclusion, one thing became clear: this wasn't just about solving a double homicide anymore. This was about money, power, fear, and a justice system that seemed to be failing the very people it was meant to protect. But the most shocking developments were still to come, and they would leave a community wondering, in our pursuit of justice, what happens when the system itself seems to stand in the way? The turning point in this case came just days before a jury was to be seated in March 2023. Kenyatta Jones, the man accused of brutally killing both Morgan and Alicia, would accept a plea deal that sent shockwaves through the Norfolk community. Instead of facing 2 counts of second-degree murder, Jones would plead guilty to 2 counts of voluntary manslaughter. And to the surprise of everyone, the sentence he got was just 8 years. 4 years for each life taken. The courtroom on the sentencing day was thick with emotion. Jones sat slouched, seemingly disengaged from the pain erupting around him. When given the chance to speak, to address the families whose lives he had shattered, he uttered just 2 words: "No, sir." Monica Bazemore, Morgan's aunt, stood before the court, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. "They didn't deserve that," she declared. "Neither do they deserve the 8-year sentence for that monster." She called Jones a coward, referencing how he had fled the scene that fatal night. Then came the letter from Alicia's mother, read through tears by Dion Mack. "The mere fact I can't be there in court shows how this has impacted me," the letter began. "There is no day without sadness and no measurement to the depth of my pain." Her words cut through the courtroom like a knife. "My sentence is the only sentence that time will truly be served for. I will serve my life sentence until my heavenly Father calls me home and I get to see my babies again." Harvey Hereford, Alicia's husband and Morgan's father, took the stand with devastating accusations. He claimed he'd been lied to until the day before the plea deal was signed, that his messages to Commonwealth's attorney Raman Fatehi went unreturned. "She served all the way up to her death," he said of his wife. "The Commonwealth that she served made no effort to prosecute her murder." The prosecution defended their decision, citing the wall of silence they'd encountered. All 4 witnesses had refused to cooperate or couldn't be located. "We believe it was fear," the prosecutor explained. Without witness testimony, crucial evidence like the dashcam video became inadmissible in court. Fatehi would later release a statement calling for a witness protection program. "It pained me to make the plea offer in this case, but without the cooperation of the key eyewitnesses, I had no choice but to authorize a plea that guaranteed that Mr. Jones would go to prison for homicide. The alternative was not a longer sentence. It was very likely to be a dismissal for lack of evidence." The final sentence included 10 years of incarceration on each count of voluntary manslaughter, with all but 8 years suspended. Jones would need to complete 8 years of good behavior and an undetermined probationary period. Time served while awaiting trial would count toward his sentence. The mystery of the $250,000 remains unsolved. The counterfeit bills, the gun in Morgan's purse, the witnesses who refused to speak, all pieces of a puzzle that may never be fully assembled. But perhaps the biggest mystery is how a system designed to protect and serve could leave a family feeling so betrayed. This case raises disturbing questions about our justice system. What happens when fear silences witnesses? How do we balance the need for convictions against the demand for justice? And what does it say about our society when 2 lives, a dedicated public servant and her young daughter, are valued at just 4 years each? Today, Alicia and Morgan's family continue their fight for justice, even as they grapple with their devastating loss. Their story serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of domestic violence and the critical need for witness protection programs. It challenges us to question whether our justice system truly serves justice or merely settles for what's convenient. If this story has moved you, if it's made you think about justice in a new way, don't let it end here. Subscribe to this channel for more in-depth investigations into cases that challenge our understanding of justice. Hit that notification bell to ensure you never miss a story that needs to be told. Remember Alicia Hereford and Morgan Bazemore. Remember how they lived, not just how they died. And remember that somewhere in Norfolk, Virginia, a family still waits for true justice, even as the days count down toward their killer's release. We pray the souls of the victims rest in perfect peace. This has been True Crime Stories 24/7, where every story matters and justice never sleeps. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you in our next video.